How's it going, everyone? I'm excited today to be joined by my good friend and musical colleague Justin over here, and he also puts content out on YouTube about a lot of the really important tangible stuff that actually matters when it comes to actually making a living with music, and he's way more of an expert at that stuff than I am for sure, so I'll link all of his info in the description if anyone's interested. So, in this video, I wanted to continue the topic that I've recently been discussing of basically working on individual melodic, linear, or single note ideas into the body, or basically working on them from a technique point of view. But what I wanted to do here is show you guys an example of something that I didn't personally choose myself, because one of the main ideas that I'm trying to really communicate to you guys with this whole concept is that you really should be applying this stuff to whatever music you really like so that you can really get inside it and hopefully have that stuff become part of your own playing. So I basically asked Justin to look for an example of something that would be just like that, something that he really liked and thought maybe it had something cool that could be part of his own playing if he worked on it in some way. And what he ended up giving us here is actually really interesting and cool. It's basically this dominant diminished type phrase that's coming from the incredible guitar playing of Jimmy Herring from his recording of Scapegoat Blues, and I've always really enjoyed Jimmy Herring a lot. You know, it's not necessarily straight ahead jazz, like a pure jazz thing here, but this stuff definitely works in that style as well. But he's always been great, whether he's playing with Widespread Panic or Jazz is Dead or even his own stuff, so I really like this idea that he picked here. Anyway, here's the phrase. Alright, so first of all, I just want to show you guys what the phrase is, the original fingering. I just want to play it for you guys, and I actually gave Justin a PDF here, and you guys can check this out too if you're interested. It basically has all the fingerings that I'm going to go through today for this, and all the different positions, moving it up and down with tabs and everything.
This is incredible.
Yeah, it really helped him out, I think, too.
Yeah,
so
it rules.
Yeah, if you want to check that out, go ahead. So I don't want to get too into the application, and I'll just play it first just so you can hear it. This is the way I originally fingered it. You know, more or less. So basically, like I said, this is all coming out of like a diminished scale. It doesn't matter what you call it, symmetrical, diminished, octatonic, you know, it's basically the dominant diminished. So if we're thinking B flat 7, it's a B flat half whole diminished scale. But of course, if you know about the diminished, it's symmetrical. So B flat half whole is the same as C sharp half whole diminished, and that's sort of like the fingering or the scale shape that I'm thinking in, at least for the first way that I worked it out.
So that's like a minor third
up
movement.
From B flat, yeah.
Like a diminished chord, right? Okay.
And the same thing, and we're going to talk a lot about that, like the symmetrical nature of this and all that. But basically, it's interesting because this scale, if I played it in C sharp, I always learned it like this, where you shift up on the low E string, and then you shift back on the D there, basically that, and the fingering, it's all coming out of that shape. But when Justin worked this out, he actually felt more comfortable doing it over here, like the bottom part, instead of going, let me do it again. He wanted to go like, and go down there, and that feels comfortable too. And it made me thinking, you know what, because with these conventional diminished scale fingerings, you could shift in a different place. You could play it like, and then shift on the A, and then shift again back like that. And if you thought of the fingering like that, that could be another, I think, viable option that feels comfortable. So I have the other fingering in the PDF, but, you know, both are legit.
Yeah, they both work.
Yeah. So, you know, this example to me that Justin picked turned out to be very interesting, ironic, and humorous for a few reasons. And first, before I get into it, I also want to say that, you know, upon learning this music, I was personally very intrigued by the harmony and form of like what's going on in the tune around that point when it's going. You know, there's a lot of cool things that are going on in that, you know, from a form and time and harmony perspective, but we're not going to get into that because that would be a whole other video. So if anyone is interested in that, put it in the comments and maybe we'll make a video about that.
Yeah, it's a really fun progression.
Yeah, for sure. It's just cool things that you could do with the diminished sound and play around, and if you know how to incorporate or apply it to other things, it could be very usable. All right, so first, the thing that I want to kind of get out of the way is basically what is similar or the same as what I've been discussing in the other recent videos, that there's no difference. And that's basically just the concept of taking an idea once you see it within a fingering, or once you learn to lick, it's basically like a shape. So you see it like that from a guitar point of view, and you can move it up and down. So you can do it in the different keys and positions and whatnot. So basically, you know, as simple as it is, if the first one is... No, it's sloppy, but, you know, maybe I'll move it down a half step. Right? And you would keep moving that down. And this is a tricky lick to begin with, so it's like...
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why it's humorous. It's like how much it was, you know...
Is
well, actually, my butt trying to play it.
Actually, the humorous part, in my opinion, is actually coming next. But I feel you on that. But it's something to me that is like, it's just so obvious, and I feel like a lot of guitar players don't think to do this because, you know, if we could see the shape in something and we can recognize that and we know it in one position, we may overestimate our abilities to be able to do that naturally in another position because we've seen the shape. But if you haven't literally taken your body or hands through, like, actually playing them in different positions, and even just moving it around once, because you're forcing yourself to kind of think in terms of like a shape, where it's like if you can just sort of memorize the finger pattern of where things are going, you're associating it like that in a way that is independent of any shape. Because a lot of times I think in our memories, if we don't do this, we only tend to associate maybe certain muscle movement patterns in association with one position or pattern. Not to get too technical or detailed about it, but, you know, but this stuff really helps a lot. So, of course, as we go to talk about the different fingerings now, you know, the whole idea of taking whatever shape you may have and moving it up and down, it applies to all of them, all right? So, as far as the different fingerings and shapes, this is where it actually got ironic and funny for me. So, if you've seen the other videos, you may already know that the other sort of main sort of part of this whole way of practicing is exploring different possible fingerings of an idea by moving them through the different fingerings or positions of the cage system. And it's interesting because I told Justin to pick whatever he wanted, thinking he would pick something that was at least conventional enough that it would fit within these positions. And of course he picked something that actually works out to be with the diminished instead. Yeah. And it's a different system, you know, and not to get into the whole Barry Harris thing of everything coming from the diminished anyway.
So now we know those four dominants are very important. They're brother and sister. Who do you play with first? Your brother and your sister. If you got them, you know, right, you play with your family first.
Sure. But yeah, so obviously the way that we would work an idea through the fingerings of the diminished scale is different from the cage, because first of all, we have 4 fingerings, but they're all identical anyway, all right? So basically what this means, it's very interesting, not to get into the whole application about this, but like, even if I started with the first fingering, if you play the B flat 7, you know, this is the original one. Right? But because the diminished is symmetrical, I'll just move that down a minor third. So I could play this in the B flat position of B flat, you know, half whole diminished. Right? I can play it down here in G. Right? And then I'll just do the E position up here. Sorry. Basically that, right? So
you're taking the same shape and you're just moving it in minor thirds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this is cool because from a harmonic point of view, not that this is really a video on that, but like if you have an idea that's coming purely out of a diminished scale like that, it's cool how you can have another idea that is conveying the same harmony and being used in the same way, but it's actually a different collection of notes. So you have like almost like 4 options or flavors. You know, obviously that's just one of the cool things about the diminished, right? So basically you have more options of how you can use these ideas if you like them, right? And then the other thing is, you know, this applies even to the cage system as well, but, you know, everything depends on context of the idea, like how long it is, like the range of the notes, like the lowest to the highest, like how many strings you're using, like everything. And that'll determine, like, you know, what options you have. Whether you're using the cage system of fingerings for the different positions of the major scale or something like the diminished, you know, the 4 identical symmetrical fingerings here, you know, you're really just using them as a blueprint to guide you through being able to find what fingerings may be possible without having to think too much about it, because it basically tells you where to look, right? But that doesn't mean you're always going to have, like, the same viable options for every idea. So with this particular idea, you know, if obviously you could play the same fingering in the different places for the 4 fingerings, but they're going to be different notes. So say you wanted to play the same notes in the different, you know, I guess it's the same fingering, but the other key or, you know, position in essence, whatever you want to call it. You got to see what's available, and what works out with this particular example is we can only play it in 3 of the 4 fingerings. So, okay, yeah, you know, if you play the B flat 7, I could play it here, right? And then the next one, like if we thought of it as like B flat half whole, that's funny because I'm thinking of this harmonically as going over a B flat 7 chord, but it actually doesn't fit comfortably in this position, this particular idea. So we go to the next one. This would be like a G half whole diminished position. And that one kind of feels good down there.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the type of thing, like, if you don't spend the time to work out these things, you may not even be aware, because, you're not used to playing that idea in that position. You're associating it with another thing completely. So just literally exploring ways to play things without any concern for an idea or application will literally, you know, inspire you to actually do different musical things. That's why I love this.
And I don't want to get ahead, and maybe this isn't totally relevant to the topic, but I feel like this can also be applied to if you're thinking in terms of, like, you know, substitutions for the chord. You know, since we're moving this, it's like could I theoretically sort of impose those chords, like if I wanted to substitute the B flat, because essentially that's what we're doing by playing these licks in those different positions, right?
Of course.
And that's the dominant. I never really thought of relating like dominant diminished that way. So now I'm seeing, like, you know, because we're treating dominant chords like diminished chords. Moving them in minor thirds, and I always knew, you know, that kind of cartoony. But we're doing that with this dominance. Sort of sounds kind of hip. Has that kind of outside blues thing.
And I'll help you out here. I'll send you my video on diminished functional harmony. If you're not interested, you guys should check it out too. If all this is going over your head, I think it clarifies all that. But yeah, of course,
diminish is confusing, or at least so, you know, for me as coming in it from like a non-theoretical, like non-jazz point of view, diminish was always this sort of mysterious thing to me. Like, I understand diminish as this kind of glue between chords, but, you know, functionally seeing that it's like that symmetrical, like seeing how this can relate to that is a little mysterious, maybe at first glance, you know? And that's why I like this example, because it sounds so musical. And that's right, and essentially that's what's going on. You know,
for sure. Well, we're using it basically, you know, for people who are confused, the basic sort of connection between any dominant and diminished is if you are thinking of any dominant chord, if you go up a half step, like a B diminished relates, it's like the same thing, or it's kind of related to like a B flat 7, but then you get the minor thirds of both of those. So if B flat 7 is related to B diminished, you know, C sharp 7 is related to D diminished. And the thing is, because the dominant chords are moving in minor thirds, the roots of those create a diminished arpeggio in and of itself, but they're actually the roots of dominant chords. But that's why we call this the half whole diminished. The actual diminished, from a functional point of view, is a half step up from it. It would be like a B diminished, but but you know, that stuff is all important, and you're right, like the general things, I don't want to get too much into the application, but like it's like, because of all this, you're right, when you do get into application of diminished ideas in particular, if you're kind of looking at it like this from a fingering point of view, it's like the applications are exponential in a way, because, you know, they can be used over different chords and whatever may relate to those chords as well. Right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So, yeah, I know with all this diminished stuff, it can get a little confusing, but if anyone has any questions or anything they want to say about this, please put it in the comments. I'm always here to help. And again, the PDF will have everything written out in notation and PDF for all the positions. So even if, you know, you learned it in one position, but you're kind of confused about how to move the shape around, because it is confusing, and that's the whole point of what I'm saying. Once you, like, literally take a shape and have moved it down, like, at least, like, 3 frets, like, by the 4th one, you're already starting to kind of be familiar with it and sort of understand it in that shape sort of way. But, you know, it can still be challenging, so that's where the PDF might help,
Yeah, the
right?
PDF's incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Good
Appreciate
work
it.
on that, man. Thank
so,
you.
That's it. And in the next episode,
hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.
I'm gonna be showing you guys, I think, 1 or 2 more examples. There'll be 2 more videos on this, you know, just unique examples of stuff I like. It'll just be me by myself, unfortunately, because, you know, it's a hassle to have to make these trips here, but it's totally worth it, and I definitely appreciate, you know, having you here
things
today.
I learned from Derek.
Yeah, vice versa, you know, we can learn from each other. That's what it's all about, right? So, hope you guys are enjoying the content, and if you like this, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like, and consider becoming a subscriber, as well as a contributor to Patreon, where you'll get all the PDFs on his channel for only $5 a month. And if you think anyone else would enjoy the content, please share it with them as well. And I will see you guys in episode 68.
Swinging and playing the blues. That's what we about.
I try to help you.